I left on a Tuesday morning. The kind of morning where fog sits heavy over the city, muting everything into soft grays and whites. My hands didn't shake as I zipped the last suitcase. I'd packed light, just clothes, my camera equipment, and the leather journal Grandma Rose had given me years ago. The one with my name embossed on the cover in gold letters that had faded to a dull copper. I didn't leave a note. There was no point. They wouldn't notice for weeks, maybe months. And when they finally did, it wouldn't be because they missed me. It would be because they needed something. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The door clicked shut behind me with a sound so final it echoed in my chest. I stood on the porch for a moment, looking back at 847 Maple Ridge Drive. The house looked the same as it always had. Perfect lawn, trimmed hedges, the kind of suburban facade that whispered success and normalcy. Inside, my parents were probably already awake, preparing for another day at Chen and Associates. My sister Amanda would be reviewing quarterly reports. Michael would be on a conference call. Kevin would be sleeping in because he could, because he was the baby, because the rules bent around him like light through water. And me? I was the shadow that had finally learned to walk away. I drove north with the windows down, even though it was cold. I needed to feel something sharp, something real. The highway stretched out ahead of me, and for the first time in my 27 years, I didn't know exactly where I was going. Just away. Always away. My phone sat in the cup holder silent. No calls. No texts asking where I was or if I was okay. Just the empty glow of a lock screen with a photo I'd taken of the Columbia River at sunset. A photo no one in my family had ever asked to see. The apartment in Portland wasn't much. A loft in the Pearl District with exposed brick walls that leaked cold in the winter and heat in the summer. The windows faced west, giving me light until the very last moment of each day. Maya and Sophie had helped me move in, their laughter filling the empty space with something I'd never had before. Not sympathy, not pity, just presence. We'd met in college, 3 kids who understood what it meant to be perpetually on the outside. Maya's parents had wanted a son. Sophie's family had wanted her to be someone else entirely. And me? I was just never quite ready. That phrase haunted me like a ghost I couldn't shake. Not ready. Started when I was 12. The family was planning the annual Thanksgiving trip to the cabin at Lake Tahoe. Everyone was gathered in the living room discussing logistics, meal planning, who would drive with whom. I sat on the bottom stair, listening, waiting for someone to ask me what I wanted to bring, or whether I preferred the upstairs bedroom or the one near the fireplace. My mother looked up, saw me there, and smiled. That smile that wasn't quite warm but wasn't cold either. Just absent. "You can stay home this year, sweetheart. We think you're not quite ready for the whole family gathering yet. Too much adult conversation. You'd be bored." I remember nodding because that's what I always did. I remember going back upstairs to my room and staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what not ready meant. Was I supposed to study for it? Practice? There was no rubric, no clear path to readiness. Just a door that stayed closed year after year while everyone else walked through it. At 15, they said I wasn't ready to join the family business discussions. At 18, I wasn't ready to attend my cousin's wedding as part of the main family table. At 21, I wasn't ready to be included in Grandma Rose's birthday planning committee. The phrase became a wall, invisible but solid. And I learned to stop asking when I'd be ready. I learned to stop expecting the door to open. But there was one person who never said those words to me. Grandma Rose lived in a small apartment across town, a place that smelled like jasmine tea and old books. Her walls were covered in photographs, decades of family history frozen in black and white and faded color. I started visiting her when I was 16, taking the bus after school, sitting in her kitchen while she made soup or folded laundry. She never asked why I came so often. She just made space for me. One afternoon I brought my camera. It was a gift I'd bought myself with money from my part-time job at the bookstore. Nothing fancy, just a decent DSLR that let me see the world through a frame I could control. I was showing Grandma Rose how it worked, explaining aperture and shutter speed when she stopped me mid-sentence. "You have a good eye, Sarah. You see things other people miss." I didn't know how to respond to that. No one had ever told me I was good at anything that mattered. I was decent at school, average at sports, quiet in social situations. I existed in the space between remarkable and forgettable. She reached into a drawer and pulled out an envelope. Inside was $200 in cash. Crisp bills that looked like they'd been saved for something important. This is for you. Not for bills or groceries. For film, for classes, for whatever helps you see more clearly. I tried to refuse. She pressed the envelope into my hands with a firmness that surprised me. They don't see you yet, Sarah. But that doesn't mean you're not worth seeing. Remember that. It was the last real conversation we had before she died. 2 years ago, on a rainy March morning, my mother called me at college to tell me Grandma Rose had passed in her sleep. The funeral was small. I stood at the back while my siblings sat in the front row, crying loudly, talking about how much they'd miss her. I didn't cry. I just held the envelope she'd given me, worn soft from being carried in my bag every day since she handed it to me. After the service, no one asked if I was okay. Michael patted my shoulder once. Amanda hugged me briefly, her perfume overwhelming. Kevin didn't acknowledge me at all. My parents were busy greeting guests, accepting condolences. I slipped out early and drove back to Eugene, back to my dorm room, back to the life I was building in the margins they'd left me. After graduation, I moved to Portland. It wasn't a dramatic decision, just a practical one. Maya and Sophie were already there, working odd jobs and dreaming big. We pooled our savings and rented a warehouse space on the east side, converting it into a photography studio. We did weddings, portraits, commercial work, anything that paid. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. Every light stand, every backdrop, every lens we added to our collection was proof that we could build something without permission. My parents didn't come to the grand opening. I'd sent them an invitation. A professionally printed card with our studio logo embossed on thick cardstock. Maya had designed it. Sophie had written the copy. I'd addressed the envelope in careful handwriting and mailed it 6 weeks in advance. They didn't RSVP. They didn't call. On the day of the opening, I checked my phone more times than I wanted to admit, hoping for a text that never came. Maya noticed. She didn't say anything, just squeezed my hand and handed me a glass of champagne we couldn't afford. For 18 months, I lived in that silence. I worked long hours, sometimes 16-hour days shooting events and editing until my eyes burned. I fell asleep on the couch in the studio more nights than I slept in my own bed. I built friendships with clients, with other photographers, with the barista at Horizon Roasters who knew my order before I walked through the door. I built a life that had nothing to do with being ready or not ready. I just was. Then, on a cold morning in November, my phone rang. The number wasn't saved, but I recognized the area code. Sacramento. I almost didn't answer. My thumb hovered over the decline button, some instinct telling me that whatever was on the other end of that call would crack the peace I'd fought so hard to build. But curiosity won. It always does. Hello? Sarah's mom. Her voice was the same. Measured, controlled, the tone she used when she was about to ask for something. I said nothing, waiting. We're having Thanksgiving at the cabin this year. The whole family. We'd like you to come. I sat down on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall. The whole family. As if I'd ever been part of that equation. Why now? I asked. She paused. I could hear voices in the background, the familiar sounds of the office. She was calling me from work. We thought it would be nice. It's been a while since we've all been together. 8 years, I said. It's been 8 years since I was invited to Thanksgiving. Another pause, longer this time. Well, we think you're ready now. Those words hit me like cold water. Ready now. As if readiness was something that happened to me rather than something they decided. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. About me. As if 8 years of absence could be erased with an invitation delivered like an afterthought. What changed? I asked. She sighed, the kind of sigh that meant she was losing patience. Does it matter? We want you there. Can you make it or not? I looked around my apartment. The bare walls I hadn't bothered to decorate. The thrift store furniture that was functional but not beautiful. The window that let in light, but also let me see the building across the street, where someone else was living a life I'd never know. I thought about the cabin at Lake Tahoe. The warmth, the fire, the laughter I'd heard about every year but never experienced. I thought about walking in and sitting at that table, surrounded by people who'd spent decades deciding I wasn't ready to join them. Can't, I said. I have plans. It wasn't true. Maya and Sophie were spending Thanksgiving with Sophie's family in Arizona. I'd been planning to work, to catch up on editing, to spend the day alone in a way that felt like choice rather than exile. Plans? My mother's voice sharpened. What kind of plans? Does it matter? I echoed her words back to her. Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. Fine, she said finally. Let me know if you change your mind. She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat there holding my phone, feeling something shift inside me. Not anger, not quite. Something colder and more settled. For 18 months I'd been waiting for them to notice I was gone. And now that they had, it was only because they wanted something. Not me. Just my presence, a body to fill a seat. A name to complete the family picture. That night, I pulled out the leather journal Grandma Rose had given me. I hadn't written in it much, just occasional thoughts and lists of things I wanted to photograph. But that night I wrote about the phone call. About the 8 years of not being ready. About the 18 months of silence. And as I wrote, something clarified. This wasn't about them anymore. It was about me, about what I was willing to accept, about the story I was going to tell myself for the rest of my life. I wasn't the one who wasn't ready. They were the ones who'd never been ready to see me. 2 weeks after my mother's call, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Amanda. Short, direct, no greeting. Dad wants to talk to you about the studio. Call him tonight. I stared at the message for a long time, trying to decode it. The studio. My studio, the one they'd never acknowledged, never visited, never asked about. Why would my father want to talk about it now? I didn't call that night. I waited 3 days, letting the message sit unanswered, wondering if they'd follow up. They didn't. On the 4th day, I called during my lunch break, sitting in my car outside a coffee shop where I just finished a client meeting. He answered on the 2nd ring. Sarah, thanks for calling back. His voice was formal, the tone he used with clients and business associates. Not warm, not cold, just transactional. Amanda said you wanted to talk about my studio. Yes, I've been doing some research. Photography studios in Portland, market saturation, profit margins. You've been open for 18 months now. How's business? The question felt like a trap. I chose my words carefully. We're doing well. Building a client base, getting repeat business. Takes time. Of course it does. That's smart, taking it slow. But I've been thinking and I have a proposition for you. I waited, saying nothing. Chen and Associates is expanding. We're opening a 2nd office in Portland, and we need professional headshots for all our staff, marketing materials, website updates. Quality work. I thought of you. Something cold settled in my stomach. After 18 months of silence, after years of not being ready, suddenly I was good enough when they needed something. You want to hire me? Yes. It would be a substantial contract. Probably 3 to 4 months of steady work. Good money. And it would give you some credibility, having a firm like ours on your client list. I closed my eyes, pressing my fingers against my temple where a headache was starting to form. Why now? I asked. He sounded confused. What do you mean? I mean, you didn't come to my opening. You didn't ask about my business for a year and a half. And now you want to hire me because it's convenient for you. Sarah, this is a professional opportunity. I'm trying to help you. Are you? Or are you trying to help yourself? Silence stretched across the line. When he spoke again, his voice had cooled. I thought you'd be grateful. This could really launch your business. I don't need you to launch my business, Dad. We're doing fine on our own. Fine isn't successful. Fine is treading water. I'm offering you a lifeline here. I'm not drowning. He exhaled sharply, the sound of patience wearing thin. Think about it. The offer stands until the end of the month. After that, we'll find someone else. He hung up before I could respond. I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, feeling something hot and sharp rising in my chest. Not anger exactly. Something more like clarity. They'd let me struggle, let me build something from nothing. And now that I'd proven I could survive, they wanted to swoop in and take credit. To be the ones who helped me succeed, even though they'd done nothing but close doors. That night, Maya and Sophie came over with Thai food and cheap wine. We sat on the floor of my apartment, containers spread out between us, and I told them about the call. Maya listened without interrupting, her dark eyes serious. Sophie kept shaking her head, muttering under her breath in Spanish. So what are you going to do? Maya asked when I finished. I don't know. Part of me wants to take it just to prove I can handle it. That I'm professional enough to work with them even after everything. And the other part? Sophie prompted. The other part wants to tell them to find someone else. That I don't need their validation. Maya reached over and squeezed my hand. You don't need their validation. But that doesn't mean you can't take the job if you want it. Just make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. What are the right reasons? Sophie laughed, pouring more wine into our glasses. That's the question, isn't it? The right reasons are whatever lets you sleep at night without feeling like you sold a piece of yourself. I thought about that for a long time. About what it would mean to walk into their new office to photograph my father and siblings, to smile and be professional while they acted like we were a normal family with a normal business relationship. Could I do that? Should I? The answer came 3 days later, not from thinking but from something I found. I was cleaning out my storage closet, looking for an old light modifier, when I came across a box I didn't remember packing. Inside were things from Grandma Rose's apartment, items I'd taken after the funeral when no one was watching. Photographs mostly and a few small keepsakes. At the bottom of the box was a stack of letters, tied with a blue ribbon. I recognized the handwriting on the envelopes. Mine. Letters I'd written to Grandma Rose during college, long rambling updates about classes and friends, and all the small details of life that no one else seemed interested in hearing. She'd kept them all. But underneath my letters was another stack, smaller, in handwriting I didn't recognize. I untied the ribbon and opened the first one. The letter was dated 15 years ago, addressed to my grandmother from someone named Catherine Wu. The name meant nothing to me. I started reading. Dear Rose, thank you for your call last week. I'm sorry to hear about Sarah. It sounds like history repeating itself, doesn't it? I know how hard it was for you when Robert was young. Always being told you were too involved, too emotional, not ready to understand the family business. Your in-laws were cruel about it. I'm sorry your son seems to have learned that same language. Please give Sarah my love, even though she doesn't know me. Some of us see her even from a distance. I read the letter 3 times, then moved to the next one and the next. Catherine Wu was Grandma Rose's best friend from childhood, someone who'd known my father when he was young. The letters painted a picture I'd never seen before. My grandmother, young and eager, married into the Chen family and immediately pushed to the margins. Too emotional for business discussions. Not ready to understand financial matters. Too soft for the hard decisions that needed to be made. She'd spent decades on the outside of her own family, watching her husband and his parents make decisions without her input. And then she'd watched her son do the same thing to his daughter. One letter dated 8 years ago made me stop breathing. Rose, I'm worried about you. You said Sarah wasn't invited to Thanksgiving again. That's the 4th year now. I know you've talked to Robert about it and I know he won't listen. Men like him never do. They inherit cruelty and call it tradition. Please don't let this break your heart the way it broke mine to watch what they did to you. Sarah's stronger than she knows, just like you were. She'll find her way. But God, I wish they could see what they're losing. I sat on the floor of my closet, surrounded by old photography equipment in cardboard boxes, crying in a way I hadn't cried since Grandma Rose died. She'd known. She'd seen the pattern, recognized it from her own life, and she'd tried to fight it. All those afternoons in her kitchen, all those envelopes of money, all that quiet support, it was her way of saying what she couldn't say out loud. You are ready. You've always been ready. They're the ones who can't see it. The next morning I called my father. He answered immediately, hope evident in his voice. Sarah, I'm glad you called. Have you thought about my offer? I have. And I'm going to pass. Silence. Then why? Because this isn't about helping me, Dad. This is about you needing something and suddenly deciding I'm good enough to provide it. And I'm done waiting for you to decide I'm ready. That's not fair. I'm offering you a real opportunity here. No, you're offering me a job. There's a difference. An opportunity would have been coming to my opening. An opportunity would have been calling me 18 months ago to see how I was doing. An opportunity would have been inviting me to Thanksgiving every year instead of making me wait until I was mysteriously ready. His voice hardened. So this is about Thanksgiving? You're turning down a business contract because of a family dinner? This is about 8 years of being told I'm not ready. This is about you calling me after 18 months of silence only because you need something. This is about a pattern, Dad. One I'm choosing not to participate in anymore. You're making a mistake. Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. Just like this business is mine. Just like my life is mine. I don't need your permission or your validation. I don't need to be ready by your standards. If you turn this down, don't come asking for help later. I won't. I never have. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From something else, something that felt like power, like taking up space, like finally saying the words that had been building inside me for years. That afternoon, I met with Maya and Sophie at the studio. We had a wedding to shoot that weekend. A sweet couple who'd met in a bookstore and wanted their photos to reflect that story. Simple, genuine, full of small moments that mattered. As we went through our shot list and discussed lighting setups, I felt something settle inside me. This was real. This work we were doing, this business we'd built, these relationships we'd formed. It didn't need my family's approval to be valid. But the peace didn't last long. 2 weeks later, Michael called. Unlike my father, he didn't bother with small talk. Did you really turn down Dad's contract? I did. Do you have any idea how that made him look? He told the partners he had a daughter with a photography business in Portland. He was trying to throw you a bone and you embarrassed him. I didn't embarrass him, Michael. I made a business decision. I'm allowed to do that. You're being childish. This is about Thanksgiving, isn't it? Mom told me you're still hung up on that. Hung up on what? Being excluded from family gatherings for 8 years? Yeah, I guess I am a little hung up on that. Oh, come on. You were young. We didn't think you'd be interested in adult conversations. I was 20 the first year I wasn't invited. I was in college. How much more adult did I need to be? He sighed, the same sigh my mother used when she was losing patience. Look, we're trying to include you now. We invited you to Thanksgiving. We offered you a job. What more do you want? I want you to acknowledge that you excluded me. I want you to admit that not ready was just an excuse. I want you to see that you hurt me. The line went quiet for a moment. When Michael spoke again, his voice was flat. We did the best we could, Sarah. We all had our own stuff going on. Amanda was dealing with her divorce. I was building my career. Kevin was struggling in school. Mom and Dad were trying to keep the business afloat and manage all of us. You were fine. You didn't need as much attention. There it was. The core belief that had shaped everything. I was fine, so I didn't need them. As if being fine meant being invisible. As if not struggling meant not mattering. You know what the sad thing is? I said. I believed that for a long time. I thought because I didn't have problems I didn't deserve attention. But that's not how family is supposed to work. You don't only show up for people when they're falling apart. Michael didn't respond to that. After a long pause he said, Dad's hurt. You should call him. I'm not calling him. If he wants to talk to me, he knows my number. You're being stubborn. I'm being clear. There's a difference. He hung up without saying goodbye. I sat in my car outside the studio, watching rain streak down the windshield, feeling exhausted in a way that went deeper than lack of sleep. Every conversation with them was the same. Every attempt to explain how I felt was met with dismissal or deflection. They couldn't hear me because they'd never learned how to listen. That night, I wrote in the journal Grandma Rose had given me. I wrote about the phone calls, about the letters I'd found, about the pattern I was finally seeing clearly. And at the bottom of the page, I wrote something I'd never articulated before. I don't need them to understand. I just need to stop waiting for them to try. 3 weeks passed. November turned cold, the kind of cold that makes you walk faster and pull your jacket tighter. The studio stayed busy. We shot 2 more weddings, a corporate event, and a series of family portraits for a client whose warmth and laughter reminded me of what family could be when people actually showed up for each other. Maya's boyfriend proposed, and we spent an entire evening celebrating, drinking champagne on the studio floor, and planning the engagement photos we'd take in the spring. Then, on a gray Monday morning, I received an email. The subject line read Family Trust Matter, Urgent. The sender was a law firm in Sacramento. My stomach dropped. I opened it slowly, scanning the formal language and legal terminology until I found the relevant information. Grandma Rose's estate, which I'd assumed had been settled 2 years ago, had left something to me. Something no one had told me about. According to the email, my grandmother had established a small trust fund in my name, to be released when I turned 25 or upon her death, whichever came later. The fund contained $30,000, saved over decades from her own modest income. The email explained that the trust had been held in probate due to a family dispute about the will's validity. My father and his siblings had contested it, claiming Grandma Rose wasn't in sound mind when she'd updated her will 3 years before her death. The case had just been settled. The trust was mine. All I needed to do was sign the paperwork. I read the email 5 times, each time feeling something different. Gratitude, grief, anger, vindication. $30,000. Enough to expand the studio, to buy better equipment, to take the business to the next level without struggling month to month. And my family had tried to take it from me. Had fought for 2 years to prove their own mother wasn't competent, just so they wouldn't have to honor her wishes. I called the lawyer whose name was on the email. She answered with practiced professionalism, but her voice warmed when I explained who I was. Miss Chen, I'm glad you reached out. Your grandmother was very specific about her wishes. She wanted you to have this and she knew your family might fight it. Did she say why? I asked. Why she left it to me and not the others? The lawyer paused. She left letters for each of her children. I'm not privy to the contents, but she did include a note for you. Would you like me to read it? Yes, please. I heard papers rustling. Then the lawyer's voice, gentle now, reading words my grandmother had written years ago. Sarah, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I'm sorry I won't be there to see what you build, but I know it will be beautiful. This money is from years of saving, from small choices to set aside what I could. Your grandfather never knew. He would have said it wasn't necessary, that the family would take care of you. But I knew better. I lived what you're living, and I don't want you to struggle the way I did. Use this to build something that's yours, something they can't take away or diminish. You are ready, Sarah. You've always been ready. They just couldn't see it because they were too busy looking elsewhere. Don't let their blindness define you. Love always, Grandma Rose. I sat in my car, phone pressed to my ear, crying silently while the lawyer waited on the other end. Thank you, I managed to say. Thank you for reading that. Of course. I'll send you the paperwork. Once you sign and return it, we can process the transfer. Should take about 2 weeks. Can I ask you something? Were they angry? My family, when they lost the case. The lawyer chose her words carefully. Let's just say they weren't pleased. But the law was clear. Your grandmother's will was valid, and her wishes were explicit. They had no legal standing. After I hung up, I sat in the parking lot of the studio for over an hour. Cars came and went. People walked by with coffee and briefcases and dogs on leashes. The world moved around me while I sat still, processing what this meant. Grandma Rose had seen me, had validated me, had given me not just money but proof that I wasn't crazy, that the pattern I'd felt was real, that someone had loved me enough to fight for me even after death. And my family had tried to take it away. Had spent 2 years in legal battles trying to prove their own mother was incompetent, rather than accept that she'd chosen to help me. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. That evening I told Maya and Sophie. We sat in the studio after closing lights dimmed, and I showed them the email and told them about the letter. Sophie cried. Maya got angry, pacing the floor and saying things in English and Tagalog that I only half understood but completely agreed with. What are you going to do? Maya asked finally. I'm going to sign the papers and take the money. And I'm going to use it exactly how she wanted me to build something that's mine. And your family? Sophie asked. Are you going to tell them you know what they did? I thought about that. Part of me wanted to call my father, to confront him, to ask how he could do this to his own daughter. But I knew how that conversation would go. He'd justify it, rationalize it, make it about protecting the family or honoring his mother's real wishes or some other reasoning that made him the hero of his own story. No, I said finally. I'm not going to tell them. I'm just going to move forward. That's the best revenge, isn't it? Living well without them. Maya smiled, fierce and proud. Damn right it is. The next morning, I went to Horizon Roasters and ordered my usual coffee. The barista, a guy named Josh who'd been working there since I moved to Portland, smiled when he saw me. You look different today. Good different. I feel different. Like something shifted. New project. Something like that. New beginning, maybe. He handed me my coffee with an extra shot of espresso on the house. To new beginnings, then. I took my coffee to a table by the window and opened my laptop. The paperwork from the lawyer was already in my inbox. I read through it carefully, every clause and condition, making sure I understood exactly what I was signing. Then I filled in my information, signed electronically, and hit send. Done. In 2 weeks, $30,000 would be mine. Money saved by a woman who'd seen me when no one else did, who'd fought for me in the only way she could. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. When I opened it, I saw it was Kevin, my younger brother. We hadn't spoken in over 2 years. The message was short. Hey, heard about Grandma's trust. Congrats, I guess. Dad's pretty pissed. I stared at the message, trying to decode its tone. Was this genuine? Sarcastic? An olive branch or a jab? With Kevin, it was always hard to tell. He'd been the baby, the one everyone coddled, but he'd also been largely ignored by me because by the time he was old enough to talk, I was already learning to be invisible. I typed back. Thanks. How did you know? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Dad was ranting about it last night at dinner. Said Grandma had no right to give you that money, that she should have split it evenly or left it to the business. And what do you think? The dots took a long time to come back. Honestly, I think it's none of my business. It was her money. She could do what she wanted with it. It was the most reasonable thing anyone in my family had said in months. I didn't know how to respond. Kevin sent another message before I could reply. Look, I know things have been weird with you and everyone else. I don't really understand all of it. But for what it's worth, I never thought you weren't ready. I just thought you didn't want to be around us. Those words hit harder than I expected. I thought you didn't want to be around us. As if my absence had been a choice born from preference rather than exclusion. As if I'd been the one building walls instead of the one locked outside them. I did want to be around you, I typed back. I just stopped waiting to be invited. The dots appeared and disappeared several times. Then finally, yeah, I get that now. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even acknowledgement of the years of exclusion. But it was something. A crack in the wall, maybe. A small recognition that things hadn't been right. I saved Kevin's number in my phone, not because I expected us to suddenly become close, but because it felt like a thread worth holding onto. Even a thin one. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed watching shadows move across my ceiling, thinking about Grandma Rose, about the trust fund, about my family's reaction. $30,000 wasn't a fortune, but it was freedom. It was the difference between scraping by and building something sustainable. It was proof that someone had believed in me enough to plan for my future, to give me tools they knew I'd need. And my family had fought it. Had spent money on lawyers, had dragged their own mother's name through probate court, had called her competency into question, all to avoid honoring her explicit wishes. That level of cruelty wasn't just about money. It was about control. About maintaining the narrative that they were the ones who decided what I deserved when I was ready, what I was worth. But Grandma Rose had seen past all of that. She'd known they'd fight it, and she'd done it anyway. That courage, that clarity, that fierce protection from beyond the grave. It was the greatest gift she could have given me. Not just the money, but the message behind it. You matter. You are worthy. Don't let them tell you otherwise. I pulled out the leather journal and wrote until my hand cramped. I wrote about being 12 and hearing not ready for the first time. I wrote about being 16 and taking the bus to Grandma Rose's apartment. I wrote about being 20 and watching my siblings leave for Thanksgiving while I stayed home. I wrote about being 27 and finally understanding that readiness was never the issue. The issue was that they needed someone to overlook, someone to diminish, someone to keep small so they could feel bigger. And I was done being that person. The trust fund would help me build the studio into something remarkable. But more than that, the knowledge of what my grandmother had done, the fact that she'd seen me clearly and fought for me, that was the real inheritance. That was what would carry me forward. The paperwork came through on a Wednesday. I was at the studio editing photos from a corporate event when my phone buzzed with an alert from my bank. Funds deposited $30,000. I stared at the screen, watching the numbers that had appeared in my account like magic, like vindication, like a voice from the past saying I told you so. Maya was at her desk across the room, color correcting a wedding series. I didn't say anything, just walked over and showed her my phone. She looked at the number, then at me, then back at the number. Her eyes filled with tears before mine did. Holy shit, Sarah. Holy shit. Sophie emerged from the darkroom where she'd been printing samples for a client presentation. She took one look at our faces and knew. It came through? I nodded, still not quite believing it. Came through. We didn't celebrate loudly. We didn't pop champagne or blast music or do any of the things people do in movies when money arrives. We just stood there, the three of us, in the studio we'd built with scraped-together savings and maxed-out credit cards and sheer stubborn determination. And we cried. Not sad tears, but the kind that come when something you've been holding tight finally loosens its grip. That night, we sat on the floor of the studio with Thai food and beer, making plans. Sophie wanted to upgrade our lighting equipment, invest in better modifiers and stands that wouldn't fall apart mid-shoot. Maya wanted to expand our marketing, maybe hire someone part-time to handle social media and client outreach, so we could focus on the actual photography. I wanted all of that, but I also wanted something else. I wanted to take a portion of the money and put it aside untouchable the way Grandma Rose had done. A safety net. A promise to myself that I'd never again be in a position where I needed anyone's permission to survive. We stayed up late, laptops open, researching equipment and crunching numbers and dreaming bigger than we'd allowed ourselves to dream before. Around midnight, Maya looked up from her spreadsheet and said something that made everything feel real. You know what this means? We're not scraping by anymore. We're actually building something that lasts. Sophie raised her beer bottle. To Grandma Rose. To women who save in secret and fight in silence and leave us weapons we didn't know we'd need. We clinked bottles and I felt something settle deep in my chest. Purpose, maybe. Or just the absence of fear. The next morning, I woke up to 7 missed calls and twice as many texts. All from my father. My stomach tightened as I scrolled through them, watching the tone shift from formal to irritated to angry. The first text was almost polite. Sarah, we need to discuss the trust distribution. Please call me today. By the 5th message, the politeness had evaporated. This is ridiculous. You can't just take that money without discussing it with the family. The final text, sent at 2 in the morning, was just one line. Your grandmother would be ashamed of your selfishness. I read that last message 3 times, feeling something hot and sharp rise in my throat. My grandmother would be ashamed. The woman who'd saved for decades to give me exactly this, who'd written explicitly that she wanted me to have it, who'd known her own children would fight her wishes. He was using her as a weapon against me, rewriting her intentions to fit his narrative. I didn't call back. Instead, I forwarded all the messages to the lawyer who'd handled the trust, along with a brief note. Is there anything in the trust documentation that requires me to discuss this with my family, or divide it differently? She responded within an hour. Absolutely not. The trust was explicit and legal. You have no obligation to your family regarding these funds. If they continue to harass you, let me know and we can pursue a cease and desist. I saved that email. Something told me I'd need it. That afternoon, Amanda called. Unlike my father, she didn't waste time with accusations. She went straight for guilt. Sarah, I need to talk to you about Mom. She's not doing well. This whole thing with Grandma's trust has really upset her. I was in my car heading to a client meeting. I put her on speaker and kept driving. What whole thing, Amanda? Grandma left me money. That's not something I did to Mom. But you know how she feels about family assets. Everything should be shared equally. That's how she was raised. Then maybe she should have raised me equally. Maybe I should have been invited to Thanksgiving equally. Maybe I should have been included in family decisions equally. Amanda sighed, the sound staticky through the phone speaker. You're still hung up on that Thanksgiving thing. Sarah, that was years ago. We were all dealing with our own problems back then. And I wasn't dealing with anything. I wasn't struggling. I wasn't building a life and trying to figure out who I was. You seemed fine. You never asked for help. I shouldn't have had to ask to be included in my own family. Silence filled the line. When Amanda spoke again, her voice was colder. Mom wants you to come home for Christmas. She thinks we need to talk this through as a family, work out some kind of arrangement where everyone benefits from Grandma's money. There is no arrangement, Amanda. The money is mine. Legally, explicitly, intentionally mine. Grandma wanted me to have it and I'm keeping it. So you're really going to take $30,000 and not share any of it? Not even help mom and dad with some of their expenses? They're getting older, Sarah. Dad's health isn't great. Mom's worried about retirement. They run a successful accounting firm. They own their house outright. They have retirement accounts and investments. They don't need my money. They just don't want me to have it. That's not fair. What's not fair is fighting a dead woman's will in court for 2 years because you couldn't accept that she saw something in me you all missed. Amanda's voice sharpened. We didn't miss anything. We just didn't think you needed to be coddled. You were always independent, always fine on your own. We gave you space. You gave me absence. There's a difference. She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat at a red light, hands gripping the steering wheel, breathing hard. Every conversation with them followed the same script. They'd done nothing wrong. I was overreacting. The past was the past. And now, instead of acknowledging any of it, they wanted me to hand over the one thing that proved someone had actually seen me. The client meeting went well. A young couple expecting their first baby, wanting maternity photos and newborn portraits. They were sweet and nervous and full of questions about packages and pricing. I walked them through our options, showed them sample albums, talked about lighting and locations and the importance of capturing real moments instead of posed perfection. They booked a full package, paid the deposit, and left holding hands and smiling. After they left, I sat in the empty studio and thought about families. About the one that couple was building, full of intention and hope. About the one I'd come from, full of patterns and pain. About the one I'd chosen, Maya and Sophie, and a handful of friends who showed up without being asked. Family wasn't blood. It was presence. It was seeing and being seen. It was the choice to stay even when leaving would be easier. My phone buzzed again. Another text from my father. We need to talk. This is getting out of hand. I'm coming to Portland next week. We'll have dinner and settle this properly. I felt my jaw tighten. He was coming here to my city, to my territory, assuming I'd make myself available. Assuming I'd sit across from him at a restaurant and let him explain why I was wrong, why I was selfish, why I owed the family something I'd never been given. I texted back immediately. Don't come to Portland. If you want to talk, we can do it over the phone. But I'm not changing my mind about the trust. His response came fast. This isn't a negotiation, Sarah. I'm your father. We're having this conversation. I turned off my phone and put it in my bag. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From anger, yes, but also from something else. Power, maybe. The power of knowing I didn't have to participate in this. I didn't have to make myself available for his convenience. I didn't have to sit through another lecture about family obligation from people who'd never obligated themselves to include me. That weekend, I went hiking with Maya and Sophie. We drove 2 hours to the gorge and spent the day walking through pine forests and alongside waterfalls. The air was cold and clean, the kind that makes your lungs feel new. We didn't talk about my family. We talked about the studio, about Maya's upcoming engagement photos, about Sophie's idea to start offering photography workshops for teens. We talked about the future we were building brick by brick, choice by choice. On the drive back, Sophie asked the question I'd been avoiding. Are you going to see your dad if he comes to Portland? I stared out the window at the passing landscape, gray sky and green trees and the river running parallel to the highway. No, I don't think I am. Maya glanced at me from the driver's seat. You sure? Sometimes it's easier to just get it over with. Let him say his piece, then move on. I shook my head. It won't be getting it over with. It'll be opening a door I've been trying to close. He doesn't want to talk. He wants to convince me I'm wrong. And I don't need to be convinced otherwise. I know what I know. Sophie reached over and squeezed my hand. Good. Hold that line. Don't let them back in just because they're knocking loud. When I got home that night, there were 2 voicemails from my father. I deleted them without listening. There was also an email from Michael with the subject line disappointing. I opened it, skimmed the contents, felt my blood pressure rise, then archived it without responding. He'd written 3 paragraphs about family loyalty, about how Grandma Rose would want us to stay united, about how my refusal to share the trust was tearing the family apart. The irony was suffocating. I was tearing the family apart. Not the years of exclusion. Not the refusal to invite me to gatherings. Not the dismissal of every attempt I'd made to be part of something. My existence, my decision to keep what had been given to me, that was the problem. I pulled out Grandma Rose's letter. The one the lawyer had read to me over the phone. I'd asked for a copy, and she'd sent it as a PDF. I printed it and put it in a frame on my desk, next to a photo of Grandma Rose and me from when I was 16. In the photo, we're in her kitchen, both laughing at something I can't remember. She's wearing her reading glasses pushed up on her head. I'm holding a mug of tea with both hands. We look comfortable. We look seen. The letter in the frame reminded me daily. You are ready, Sarah. You've always been ready. They just couldn't see it because they were too busy looking elsewhere. Don't let their blindness define you. Monday morning, my father called from a Portland number. He was here. I let it go to voicemail. He called again an hour later, then again in the afternoon. Each time I watched the phone buzz on my desk and let it ring through. Maya watched me watch the phone. You okay? I nodded. I'm not answering. Good. You don't owe him your time. But he kept calling. Every hour like clockwork. By 5 o'clock I had 9 missed calls. Then a text. I'm at Horizon Roasters on 23rd. I know you come here. I'll wait. My stomach dropped. He'd found my coffee shop, my place. The spot where I'd spent countless mornings working and thinking and existing outside of his influence. He was invading it, claiming it, turning it into a stage for confrontation. Maya saw my face. What happened? He's at Horizon. He's waiting for me there. Sophie looked up from her computer. That's some stalker-level shit right there. You don't have to go. I know. But now I can't go there anymore without wondering if he's waiting. He's taking my space away. Then take it back. Go there, tell him to leave and reclaim it. Don't let him have power over where you feel safe. I thought about that. Part of me wanted to avoid the whole thing, to just find a new coffee shop, to let him sit there alone until he gave up. But Sophie was right. If I let this push me out of my own routines, my own places, then he'd won something. He'd proven that his presence still controlled my choices. I grabbed my jacket and my bag. I'm going. Maya stood up. We're coming with you. No. I need to do this alone. But thank you. Sophie frowned. At least text us when you're done. Let us know you're okay. I will. The walk to Horizon Roasters took 15 minutes. With every step I rehearsed what I'd say. Keep it short. Keep it clear. Don't get pulled into justifications or explanations. Just state the boundary and leave. But by the time I pushed open the door and saw him sitting at a corner table, coffee cup in hand, eyes on the door like he'd been waiting for hours, all my rehearsed words evaporated. He stood when he saw me. Sarah, thank you for coming. I didn't come because you asked. I came because this is my coffee shop, and I want you to know you're not welcome here. His face shifted, surprise mixing with something harder. Can we at least talk? 5 minutes. I stayed near the door, keeping distance between us. Say what you need to say. He glanced around at the other patrons, people working on laptops, reading books, having quiet conversations. This isn't the place for this discussion. Let's go somewhere private. No. You came here. You wanted to talk. So talk. He sat back down, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. I didn't move. He sighed, rubbing his temples like I was giving him a headache. This situation with your grandmother's trust, it's causing problems for the whole family. Your mother is upset. Your siblings feel like you're being selfish. We need to find a solution that works for everyone. There is a solution. It's the one Grandma Rose created. The money goes to me. End of solution. That's not fair to the rest of the family. She had 4 other children, grandchildren. That money should be distributed more equitably. It is distributed exactly how she wanted it distributed. She was explicit. She knew you'd fight it and she did it anyway. That should tell you something. Tells me she wasn't thinking clearly. She was old, probably influenced by, I don't know, guilt or sentimentality. We shouldn't honor wishes made under those conditions. She was 78 and sharp as ever. She knew exactly what she was doing. You contested her will and lost because the court agreed she was competent. You don't get to rewrite that now. His jaw tightened. I can see you're not going to be reasonable about this. I'm being perfectly reasonable. You're just not hearing what you want to hear. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. You know what I think? I think you're using this money as revenge. You're punishing us for imagined slights from years ago. Imagined slights. The words hung in the air between us, sharp and dismissive. 8 years of not being invited to Thanksgiving wasn't imagined. 18 months of silence after I moved away wasn't imagined. Being told I wasn't ready over and over again wasn't imagined. And you fighting to take away the one thing Grandma gave me, that's not imagined either. We never meant to exclude you. We thought you preferred to do your own thing. Did you ever ask? Did you ever call and say, "Hey Sarah, do you want to come to Thanksgiving?" Did you ever check in to see if I was okay, if I needed anything, if I wanted to be part of the family? He said nothing. The silence was answer enough. You didn't exclude me because you thought I preferred it. You excluded me because it was easier. Because I didn't demand attention. Because I learned early on that asking for anything meant disappointment. So I stopped asking. And you let me disappear. That's not true. We always knew where you were. Knowing where someone is isn't the same as seeing them. Grandma Rose saw me. She knew what it was like to be pushed to the margins, to be told she wasn't ready, to watch everyone else be included, while she waited for permission that never came. She lived your pattern before I did. And she made sure I had a way out. My father's face was red now, anger and something else, maybe shame, coloring his features. So that's it? You take the money and walk away? You turn your back on your family? I'm not turning my back. I'm just facing forward. There's a difference. I turned to leave, then stopped and looked back at him. Don't come to my coffee shop again. Don't show up at my studio. Don't wait for me at places I go. If you want to talk, call first and ask if I'm available. But stop assuming I owe you access to my life. I walked out before he could respond. My hands were shaking so hard I had to shove them in my pockets. I made it 2 blocks before I had to stop and lean against a building, breathing hard. Feeling tears I hadn't let fall in front of him now streaming down my face. Maya's text came through within seconds. Are you okay? Do you need us? I'm okay. I did it. I said what I needed to say. I'm going home. Proud of you. Call if you need anything. I walked the rest of the way home slowly, letting the cold air calm my racing heart. When I got to my apartment, I made tea and sat by the window watching the city lights come on as dusk settled in. My phone buzzed with a text from Kevin. Dad just called. Said you were disrespectful. For what it's worth, I think he needed to hear whatever you said. I smiled despite everything. Thanks, Kevin. He sent back a thumbs up emoji, and that small gesture of solidarity meant more than I could articulate. That night, I wrote in the journal. I wrote about the confrontation, about the feeling of holding my ground, about the way my father's face had looked when I'd called out the pattern he'd been denying. I wrote about being scared and doing it anyway, about choosing myself even when it felt selfish, about understanding that self-preservation isn't the same as selfishness. The next morning, Josh at Horizon Roasters greeted me with his usual smile. You okay? You seemed upset when you left yesterday. I'm okay. Just family stuff. He nodded knowingly. Family stuff is the worst. Extra shot today? Yeah, extra shot. I took my coffee to my usual table by the window. It felt different now, claimed mine again. My father had tried to take it from me, to make it a place of confrontation instead of peace. But I'd taken it back. I'd looked him in the eye and told him no. And I'd survived. Over the next few days, the calls from my family slowed. My father stopped texting. Amanda sent one more email that I archived without reading. Michael went silent. Only Kevin checked in occasionally. Brief messages that didn't demand anything in return. Just letting you know I'm around if you need to talk. Or saw this photo and thought you'd like it. Followed by a picture of something random, a sunset or a weird sign or his dog doing something stupid. Those small messages were lifelines. Not because they fixed anything or healed wounds, but because they were offered without expectation. Kevin wasn't trying to change my mind or make me feel guilty. He was just being present in the small ways he knew how. And that was enough. The studio thrived. With the trust money, we upgraded equipment, hired a part-time assistant to handle administrative work, and booked out 3 months in advance. We raised our prices because we could, because our work was worth it, because we were good at what we did. Clients kept coming, kept referring their friends, kept leaving reviews that made my heart swell with pride. One evening, Maya, Sophie, and I stayed late celebrating a particularly good month. We'd exceeded our revenue goals, landed a contract with a local magazine, and had a waiting list for wedding bookings. Sophie opened a bottle of wine she'd been saving, and we toasted to Grandma Rose, to hard work, to the business we'd built from nothing. You know what's wild? Maya said. We did this without them. Without your family's help or approval or even acknowledgement. We just did it. Sophie raised her glass. To doing it anyway. To building things that last. To chosen family. We clinked glasses and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not just happiness or pride but peace. The kind that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what you're meant to do, with exactly the people who see you for who you are. My father never came back to Portland. Or if he did, he didn't contact me. Christmas came and went. My mother sent a generic family photo card with a handwritten note at the bottom. We miss you. Hope you're well. I put it in a drawer and didn't respond. I spent Christmas with Maya's family. Loud and warm and full of laughter that didn't carry subtext. Sophie's mom taught me how to make tamales. Maya's dad told embarrassing stories about Maya as a kid. They treated me like I belonged, no questions asked, no readiness required. And for the first time in my life, I felt what family was supposed to feel like. Not perfect, not without complications, but present. Intentional. Real. January arrived with freezing rain that turned Portland's streets into black mirrors. The studio was quiet in that post-holiday way. Clients recovering from their own family obligations. Everyone moving slower after the chaos of the season. I used the downtime to organize files, update our website, and sort through equipment we'd accumulated over the past year. Maya was visiting her family in California. Sophie had taken a week off to remodel her bathroom. I had the studio to myself and the silence felt like a gift. On the 3rd day of January, a certified letter arrived at the studio. I signed for it with that familiar drop in my stomach, the one that came whenever official mail showed up. The return address was from Chen and Associates, my family's firm. I sat at my desk and stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Inside was a formal document, printed on expensive letterhead. Notice of family meeting regarding estate planning and asset distribution. The letter was signed by my father in his capacity as head of the family business. It informed me that a mandatory family meeting had been scheduled for February 1st at the offices of Chen and Associates in Sacramento. The purpose was to discuss estate planning for my parents, distribution of family assets, and long-term care arrangements. My attendance was required. Required. The word sat heavy on the page. I read the entire document twice, searching for the actual legal weight behind that word. There was none. This wasn't a court summons or a legal obligation. It was a demand dressed up in formal language, an attempt to use official-sounding terminology to compel compliance. At the bottom of the letter, in smaller print, was a note that almost made me laugh. Failure to attend may result in exclusion from future family decisions and asset distributions. I set the letter down and stared out the window at the rain. They were threatening to exclude me from things I'd never been included in. They were using absence as punishment when absence had been my entire childhood experience. The audacity of it was almost impressive. I took a photo of the letter and sent it to the lawyer who'd handled Grandma Rose's trust. Her response came within an hour. This has no legal standing. You're under no obligation to attend. If they continue to harass you with pseudo-legal documents, we can pursue action for intimidation. Do not feel pressured by this. I saved her email and then did something I hadn't done in months. Called Kevin. He answered on the 3rd ring, sounding out of breath. Hey Sarah. What's up? Did you get a letter about a family meeting in February? Oh that. Yeah. Dad's been talking about it for weeks. He wants to discuss his will, make sure everything's organized. Why did you get one too? I did. It says my attendance is required. Kevin laughed, not unkindly. Required? That's such a dad thing to say. Look, between you and me, this whole thing is about control. He wants everyone in the same room so he can lay down the law about how things are going to be handled when he and mom are gone. And what, I'm supposed to drop everything and show up so he can tell me what I'm allowed to have. Pretty much. Are you going? No. Absolutely not. Kevin was quiet for a moment. Yeah, I figured. For what it's worth, I think this whole meeting is ridiculous. But Dad's convinced that if he doesn't organize everything now, we'll all fight about it later. We're already fighting about it. Or they're fighting with me. I'm just trying to live my life. I know. Hey, can I ask you something? When you left, did you plan it? Or did you just wake up one day and decide you were done? The question caught me off guard. I thought about that morning, the fog, the suitcase, the quiet click of the door. Both, I guess. I've been planning it in my head for years. But the actual doing of it, that came all at once. Why? Because I think about it sometimes. Leaving. Just getting out and starting over somewhere they can't reach me. You should. That's what you need. He sighed. Maybe. I don't know. It's different for me. I'm in the business. I'm tied to them financially. It would be harder to walk away. Or easier because you'd know exactly what you're walking away from. No ambiguity. Yeah. Maybe. Thanks, Sarah. For what? For answering. For not being mad at me for still being here. I'm not mad, Kevin. Everyone has to make their own choices about what they can live with. After we hung up, I sat with that conversation for a while. Kevin was younger, still finding his way. Still embedded in the structure I'd escaped. Part of me wanted to tell him to run. To get out before the patterns calcified around him. But that wasn't my choice to make. All I could do was show him that leaving was possible. That life existed beyond the narrow boundaries they'd drawn. I drafted a response to the certified letter. Short, formal, clear. To whom it may concern. I will not be attending the family meeting scheduled for February 1st. I am not available for estate planning discussions, and do not wish to be included in future family asset distributions. Please remove me from any further correspondence regarding these matters. I printed it, signed it, and mailed it certified mail so they'd have to sign for it the way I'd signed for theirs. 2 weeks later, my mother called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the hope that she'd surprise me. Sarah, we got your letter. Your father is very hurt. I waited, saying nothing. This meeting is important. It's about family legacy, about making sure everyone's taken care of. You can't just opt out of being part of this family. I'm not opting out of being part of the family. I'm opting out of participating in discussions about assets I don't want and decisions I was never part of making. That's not how family works. We do things together. We make decisions together. Do we? Because I don't remember being part of the decision to exclude me from Thanksgiving for 8 years. I don't remember being consulted about Grandma's trust before you contested it. I don't remember being asked if I wanted to be part of the family business or the estate planning or any of it. You only want me involved now because you need something. We've always wanted you involved. You're the one who left. I left because I was already gone. You just didn't notice. She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was tight. You're being unfair. We did our best with what we had. Your siblings needed more attention. You were fine. There it was again. That word. Fine. The excuse they'd used to justify years of benign neglect. Being fine doesn't mean not needing anything, Mom. Just means I learned not to ask. And now you're upset because I'm not asking anymore. I'm not waiting to be invited. I'm not hoping you'll notice. I'm just living. If you don't come to this meeting, your father is going to write you out of the will completely. Then he should do that. I don't want anything from him. I don't want anything that comes with strings and conditions and the requirement that I perform gratitude for being included in something that should have been mine all along. So that's it? You're just done with us? I'm not done with you. I'm just done waiting for you to be different than you are. I'm done hoping you'll see me. I'm done trying to earn something I should have been given freely. I'm choosing peace instead. She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat there holding the phone, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. Sadness for what we'd never been. Relief that I'd finally said out loud what I'd been feeling for years. The studio kept me busy through February. We shot 3 weddings, a handful of engagement sessions, and a large family reunion that took all day and left us exhausted but satisfied. The work was good. The clients were kind. The checks cleared. Maya's engagement photos went viral on our Instagram, bringing in dozens of new inquiries. Sophie's workshop idea took off, and we started hosting monthly photography classes for teenagers interested in learning the craft. Life moved forward. Not perfectly, not without stress, but with purpose. With intention. With people who showed up because they wanted to, not because they were required to. On the morning of February 1st, the day of the family meeting I'd refused to attend, I woke up early and went for a run along the waterfront. The sun was just coming up, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange that photographers dream about. I stopped at the seawall and watched the light change, thinking about what was happening in Sacramento at that very moment. My family gathered around a conference table, discussing assets and wills and the future distribution of things I'd never be part of. My empty chair a statement they'd interpret however they needed to. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel like I was missing something. I just felt free. Free from the expectation that I'd show up on demand. Free from the performance of gratitude. Free from the hope that this time would be different. My phone buzzed with a text from Kevin. They're about to start. Dad keeps looking at your empty chair like it personally offended him. I smiled and texted back. Tell him the chair is just fine. It doesn't need as much attention as everyone thinks. He sent back a laughing emoji. Then another message. I'll fill you in later if you want. But honestly, you're not missing anything important. Just a lot of talk about who gets what and who's responsible for what. Same old power plays. Thanks for the update. Survive it and then get out of there. Working on it. I finished my run and went to Horizon Roasters where Josh greeted me with coffee and a breakfast sandwich I hadn't ordered. You looked like you needed something substantial today. On the house. Thanks, Josh. You're good people. So are you. Whatever you're dealing with, you've got this. I took my coffee and sandwich to the window seat and opened my laptop. I had editing to do, emails to answer, a business to run. I had a life that was mine, built with my own hands, supported by people who chose to be there. That was worth more than any inheritance, any will, any seat at a table where I'd never been welcome. Around noon my phone started buzzing with messages. First from Amanda. This is childish, Sarah. You should have been here. Then from Michael. Dad's rewriting the will. You're out. Hope you're happy. Then, surprisingly, from my mother. I wish you'd come. It would have meant a lot. I read each message once and didn't respond to any of them. There was nothing to say. They'd made their choices. I'd made mine. The only difference was that I was at peace with mine. That evening Kevin called. I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. That was brutal. 5 hours of Dad talking about his legacy and making sure we all understood our responsibilities to the family name. Amanda cried 3 times. Michael looked like he wanted to jump out a window. Mom just sat there nodding at everything Dad said. Sounds like I made the right choice skipping it. You absolutely did. Oh, and he officially wrote you out of the will. Made this big dramatic announcement about it. Said anyone who doesn't respect family obligations doesn't deserve family benefits. How did everyone react? Amanda looked satisfied. Michael looked uncomfortable. Mom looked sad. And I just sat there thinking about how fucked up it is that we treat family like a business transaction. It is fucked up. I'm sorry you had to sit through that. Yeah, well. Someone had to represent the younger generation's complete lack of enthusiasm for this whole dynasty bullshit. I laughed despite everything. You're going to be okay, Kevin. So are you. Actually, you're more than okay. You're free. I'm kind of jealous. You can be free too. Anytime you want. I'm working on it. Give me a few more years to get my finances in order and figure out what I actually want to do with my life. Then maybe I'll follow your lead. I'm here when you're ready. After we hung up, I thought about what freedom actually meant. It wasn't about having money or living in a certain place or achieving specific goals. It was about no longer organizing your life around other people's disappointment. It was about choosing your own definition of success. It was about walking away from tables where you weren't fed and building your own feast elsewhere. March came with unexpected warmth. The cherry blossoms bloomed early, turning the city into something magical. Maya got married in a small ceremony at a garden outside the city. Sophie and I were her only attendants. We cried through the whole thing, not from sadness but from joy, from witnessing love that was chosen and nurtured and celebrated. At the reception, Maya's father gave a toast about family being the people who show up, not the people who share your blood. He looked directly at Sophie and me when he said it, and we understood. We were family. We'd been family all along. In April, I got an email from an unexpected source. Catherine Wu, Grandma Rose's best friend, the woman whose letters I'd found in that box months ago. She was in her 80s now, living in San Francisco, and she'd heard about the trust fund situation from mutual acquaintances. Dear Sarah, I don't know if you remember me, but I was your grandmother's closest friend for over 60 years. Rose talked about you often, especially in those last years. She was so proud of you, so worried about you, and so determined to give you something that couldn't be taken away. I'm glad you received the trust and that you kept it despite your family's resistance. Rose would have been proud of that too. She always said you had a spine of steel hidden under all that quiet. I'm writing because I have some things of Rose's that I'd like to give you. Letters, photos, some small items she'd asked me to hold on to. If you're ever in San Francisco, I'd love to meet you properly. You can reach me at this email. With love, Catherine. I read the email 3 times, each time feeling emotion rise in my throat. Grandma Rose had talked about me, had been proud of me, had seen the strength I'd been developing in silence. I responded immediately, thanking Catherine and promising to visit soon. 2 weeks later, I drove to San Francisco on a Saturday morning. The coast highway stretching out beautiful and terrifying as the road hugged the cliffs. Catherine lived in a small apartment in the Richmond district, the kind of place that felt frozen in time. She opened the door and I saw Grandma Rose in her face, in her smile, in the way she pulled me into a hug without hesitation. You look just like her at your age. Come in, come in. Her apartment was filled with books and plants and photographs spanning decades. She made tea, and we sat in her living room while she told me stories about Grandma Rose. About how she'd been treated by my grandfather's family, pushed aside, told she wasn't smart enough for business talk, relegated to hosting and cleaning while the men made decisions. About how she'd slowly saved money over decades, hiding it in small amounts so no one would notice. About how she'd sworn that if she ever had a granddaughter who was overlooked the way she'd been overlooked, she'd make sure that girl had options. She saw herself in you, Catherine said, and she was determined to give you what no one gave her. A way out. A choice. Catherine handed me a box, similar to the one I'd found in my closet but older, more worn. Inside were letters Grandma Rose had written but never sent, diary entries, photographs of her as a young woman looking both hopeful and sad. There was also an envelope with my name on it, sealed, dated 3 months before she died. She made me promise to give this to you only after the trust was settled. She wanted you to have it when you were truly free. I held the envelope with shaking hands. Can I open it here? Of course, dear. Take your time. I slid my finger under the seal and pulled out several pages of Grandma Rose's careful handwriting. The letter began simply, "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then you've received the trust and survived whatever fight your father put up against it. I'm proud of you for keeping it. Now I want to tell you the whole story, the one I never had the courage to tell you in person." The letter went on for pages. She wrote about her marriage, about being young and in love and slowly realizing that love wasn't enough when respect was absent. She wrote about being excluded from business meetings, from financial decisions, from conversations about the future of the family. She wrote about saving in secret, about the shame of having to hide money from her own husband, about the determination to give her future granddaughters options she'd never had. She wrote about watching my father repeat the patterns his father had established, about seeing me disappear the way she disappeared, about feeling helpless to stop it. And then she wrote about the decision to create the trust, knowing it would cause conflict, knowing my father would fight it, but doing it anyway because some battles are worth the cost. The letter ended with words that I would carry with me forever. You are not too quiet, Sarah. You are not too fine. You are not too independent. You are exactly who you're supposed to be. The problem was never you. It was their inability to see beyond their own needs. I love you. I've always loved you. And I'm so proud of the woman you're becoming. Build a beautiful life. Fill it with people who see you. And never ever apologize for taking up space. With all my love, Grandma Rose. I cried in Catherine's living room, the kind of crying that comes from a wound finally being cleaned. Catherine sat with me, held my hand, didn't try to make it stop. When I finally caught my breath, she smiled. She loved you so much. We used to have lunch every Tuesday, and she'd always update me about you. What you were studying, what photos you'd shown her, how talented you were. You were her hope, Sarah. The proof that the patterns could be broken. I'm trying to break them. I'm trying so hard. You already have. You left. You built something. You kept what was yours. That's breaking the pattern. That's winning. I stayed with Catherine for hours, looking through photographs, listening to stories, feeling connected to a history I'd only partially known. When I finally left, she hugged me tight and made me promise to visit again. You're not alone, Sarah. You never were. Rose made sure of that. The drive back to Portland felt different. Lighter somehow. I had proof now, not just in the trust fund but in words, in stories, in the knowledge that I'd been seen and loved and fought for. That Grandma Rose had recognized the patterns and done everything she could to give me an escape route. That I wasn't crazy or oversensitive or ungrateful. I was just a woman who'd been overlooked and had finally learned to look at herself. By the time summer arrived, the studio was thriving beyond anything we'd imagined. We'd moved to a bigger space, hired 2 more part-time employees, and had a waiting list that stretched into the following year. Maya was talking about expanding into videography. Sophie had published a photography book featuring her work with teenagers, and it was selling well. And me, I was just doing the work day after day, building something that mattered. My family didn't contact me much anymore. Kevin texted occasionally, updates about his life, questions about mine. My mother sent a birthday card in July with a generic message. My father didn't reach out at all. And I was okay with that. I'd stopped waiting for them to change. I'd stopped hoping for acknowledgement. I'd simply moved forward, and in that moving forward, I'd found something more valuable than their approval. I'd found myself. One evening in late August, I was closing up the studio when my phone rang. Unknown number. Sacramento area code. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Sarah. It's Amanda. Her voice was different. Smaller somehow. Less certain. Hi Amanda. I wanted to call. To talk. That's okay. Okay. I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened. About the trust, about Thanksgiving, about all of it. And I realized I owe you an apology. I said nothing, just waited. We did exclude you. We told ourselves you were fine, that you didn't need us, that you preferred being independent. But the truth is, it was easier not to pay attention to you. You didn't demand it the way the rest of us did. And we took advantage of that. I took advantage of that. And I'm sorry. The apology hung in the air between us. I'd wanted this for so long, this acknowledgement, this admission. And now that I had it, I didn't know what to do with it. Thank you for saying that. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what we did. And I'm sorry. I appreciate that, Amanda. I really do. We talked for a few more minutes carefully, like 2 people walking on ice that might crack. She told me about her life, her kids, her struggles. I told her about the studio, about the trust fund making a real difference, about the life I'd built. When we hung up, I didn't feel healed or whole or like everything was fixed. I just felt like something had shifted. Not back to where it was, but forward to somewhere new. That night, I wrote in the journal one last time. I wrote about Amanda's call, about forgiveness being complicated, about how acknowledgement doesn't erase hurt, but it does create space for something else. I wrote about Grandma Rose, about Catherine, about the letters and the truth and the long line of women who'd been overlooked and had learned to see themselves anyway. I wrote about Maya and Sophie, about chosen family, about building things that last. And I wrote about myself, about the woman I was becoming, about the choice to keep moving forward, even when the past kept trying to pull me back. The last thing I wrote was a promise. I will never again wait to be ready in someone else's eyes. I will never again make myself small so others can feel big. I will never again apologize for taking what was freely given. I am ready. I've always been ready. And I'm done asking permission to exist. I closed the journal and put it on the shelf next to the framed letter from Grandma Rose. Tomorrow I'd wake up and go to work and build my business and love my chosen family and live my life. Not in reaction to my past, but in response to my future. Not waiting to be invited, but creating my own tables. Not hoping to be seen, but seeing myself clearly and loving what I found there. The rain started again, soft against the windows, and I stood there listening to it, feeling nothing but peace. I had left home before dawn 18 months ago, and I had never looked back with regret. Only with understanding. Only with gratitude for the strength that came from survival. Only with pride for the woman I'd become in the quiet spaces they'd left empty. I was ready. I'd always been ready. And finally, blessedly, I knew it too. The autumn came quietly, the way good things often do. September brought cooler air and golden light that made everything look like it belonged in a painting. The studio had its best quarter yet, and we celebrated by taking a weekend trip to the coast. Just the 3 of us, cameras in hand but no pressure to work. We stayed in a small cabin overlooking the ocean and spent our days walking on the beach, cooking elaborate meals, and talking about dreams we were finally brave enough to say out loud. On the last night of the trip, we built a fire on the beach. The sun was setting, painting the sky in impossible colors, and Sophie turned to me with that look she got when she was about to say something important. You know what I've been thinking about? How different you are now than when we first met. Not bad different. Just more yourself. Maya nodded, poking at the fire with a stick. You were so quiet back then. Like you were afraid to take up space. Now you just exist without apology. It's beautiful to watch. I stared at the flames, thinking about who I'd been at 19, fresh out of high school and terrified of being too much or not enough. Always calculating how much of myself was safe to show. Always waiting for permission to speak, to want, to need. I think I spent so many years trying to be easy that I forgot I was allowed to be complicated. I forgot I could have opinions and boundaries and standards. I thought being fine meant being enough. But it just meant being invisible. Sophie reached over and squeezed my hand. You're not invisible anymore. You're actually kind of hard to miss these days. We laughed, and the sound mixed with the crash of waves and the crackle of burning wood. That night, sleeping in the cabin with the windows open and the ocean loud in the darkness, I felt something I'd been chasing for years without knowing it. Contentment. Not happiness exactly, because happiness comes and goes. But contentment, that deep settled feeling that you're exactly where you belong. October brought unexpected news. Kevin called on a Wednesday afternoon, while I was editing photos from a wedding we'd shot that weekend. His voice was different, excited in a way I'd rarely heard. I did it. I quit. Quit what? The firm. Chen and Associates. I'm done. I'm out. I stopped what I was doing, giving him my full attention. What happened? Nothing dramatic. I just woke up one morning and realized I was 24 years old and I hated my job. I hated sitting in that office listening to Dad talk about legacy and responsibility. I hated pretending I cared about tax law and estate planning. So I quit. What are you going to do instead? I have no idea. That's the terrifying and exciting part. I'm thinking about going back to school. Maybe studying something completely different. Architecture, maybe. Or environmental science. Something that actually interests me. Kevin, that's incredible. How did Dad take it? He lost his mind. Yelled for about an hour about responsibility and throwing away opportunities and disrespecting everything he'd built. Mom cried. Amanda looked horrified. Michael just sat there drinking his coffee like he wished he could do the same thing. And you? I felt free. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could breathe. I get it now. Why you left. Why you had to. You can't build a life on other people's expectations. Just collapses eventually. I'm proud of you, Kevin. That took courage. I learned from the best. You walked away with nothing but a duffel bag and built a whole life. If you can do that, I can figure out what I actually want to do with mine. After we hung up, I sat at my desk feeling something warm spread through my chest. Kevin had found his own exit. Had chosen himself over the comfort of staying in patterns that didn't fit. The patterns were breaking one person at a time. That's how change happens, not in grand dramatic gestures, but in individual choices to walk away from tables where you're not nourished. November arrived with the kind of cold that gets into your bones. Thanksgiving approached, and for the first time I didn't feel the familiar ache of exclusion. Maya and Sophie and I had plans to cook together at the studio, invite a few friends who didn't have family nearby, create our own celebration. No obligation, no performance, just gratitude for what we'd built. 2 days before Thanksgiving, my mother called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out again. Sarah, it's Mom. I was wondering if you'd like to come to Thanksgiving this year. At the cabin. Just like old times. I closed my eyes, recognizing the familiar pull. The hope that maybe this time would be different. But I knew better now. Just like old times? Mom, I was never invited to old times. I spent 8 Thanksgivings being told I wasn't ready. I'm not interested in pretending that didn't happen. We want to make it right. We want you there. Please. Why now? What changed? Kevin won't be coming. He's still angry about everything. Amanda has her kids and can't travel. Michael is going to his in-laws. It's just going to be me and your father at the cabin, and that seems so sad. There it was. Not we miss you or we realize we were wrong or we want to know you. Just we need you to fill a gap. To make our holiday less sad. To perform the role of daughter so they don't have to face the emptiness of what they created. I'm not a backup plan, Mom. I'm not here to fill seats when everyone else is unavailable. I'm a person who spent years hoping you'd choose me first, just once. And you never did. I've made peace with that. You should too. So you're really not coming. I have plans. With people who want me there every year, not just when it's convenient. She was quiet for a long moment. Your father misses you. He won't say it, but he does. If he misses me, he can call me himself. He can apologize for the things he said, for the ways he tried to control me, for writing me out of his will like I was a line item to be deleted. But I'm not going to show up and pretend none of that happened just to make him feel better. You're very hard, Sarah. I don't remember you being this hard. I'm not hard, Mom. I'm just clear. There's a difference. She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat there holding my phone, feeling that old familiar sadness try to creep back in. But it didn't take hold. I'd learned to recognize it for what it was. Grief for a relationship that never existed. Mourning for parents who couldn't show up the way I needed them to. But grief doesn't mean you go back. It just means you acknowledge the loss and keep moving forward anyway. Thanksgiving at the studio was exactly what I needed. We cooked too much food, laughed too loud, took photos that we'd never post but would treasure forever. Josh from Horizon Roasters came, bringing pies he'd baked himself. Maya's cousin drove up from Eugene. Sophie's brother flew in from Texas. We sat around tables we'd pushed together, mismatched chairs and borrowed dishes, and everyone shared what they were grateful for. When it was my turn, I looked around at these people who'd chosen to be here, who showed up without obligation or expectation, who loved me not despite my complications but because of my wholeness. I'm grateful for this. For all of you. For learning that family is something you build, not something you're assigned. For understanding that being fine doesn't mean being enough. And being enough doesn't require anyone's permission. Maya raised her glass. To chosen family. To building things that last. To Sarah, who taught us all what courage looks like. We drank and I felt tears on my cheeks that I didn't bother to hide. These were good tears. Healing tears. The kind that come when you finally stop fighting for the wrong things and start embracing the right ones. December brought the kind of busy that made days blur together. Holiday portraits, corporate parties, year-end deadlines. We worked long hours but happy ones, the kind of tired that comes from doing work that matters. On the 15th, an envelope arrived at the studio. Expensive paper, my name written in handwriting I recognized. My father's. Inside was a single piece of paper. Not a letter, just a formal document. Amendment to last will and testament. He'd reinstated me as a beneficiary. Not for everything but for a portion. A smaller portion than my siblings, but something. At the bottom in his handwriting was a single line. I was wrong about some things. This is my attempt to acknowledge that. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even close. But it was something. An admission, however small, that he'd made mistakes. That he'd misjudged something. I folded the paper and put it in a drawer. I didn't need his money, didn't want it actually. But the gesture mattered. The acknowledgement mattered. Not because it changed anything but because it proved change was possible, even in people who seemed carved from stone. I didn't call him. Didn't send a thank you note. Didn't acknowledge the gesture beyond putting the paper away safely. Some things didn't need a response. They just needed to be witnessed and filed away as evidence that people sometimes could grow. Christmas Eve. I was alone in my apartment wrapping gifts for Maya and Sophie when my phone rang. Kevin, his voice urgent. Sarah, Dad's in the hospital. Heart attack. It happened this morning. He's stable now, but it was bad. They're saying he needs surgery. My stomach dropped. Is he going to be okay? They think so. But Sarah, he's been asking for you. Actually asking. By name. I sat down on the floor, surrounded by wrapping paper and ribbon. What do you want me to do, Kevin? I want you to do whatever feels right for you. But I thought you should know. In case you wanted to come. I'll think about it. Keep me updated. I will. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time. Part of me wanted to rush to Sacramento, to sit at his bedside, to be the daughter who showed up in crisis. But another part, the part that had learned hard lessons about obligation versus choice, reminded me that I didn't owe him my presence just because he was sick. That showing up had to be my choice, not a response to guilt or expectation. I called Maya. She answered immediately, Christmas music playing in the background. Hey, what's up? You okay? My dad had a heart attack. He's in the hospital. Kevin says he's asking for me. Oh, Sarah, what are you going to do? I don't know. Part of me feels like I should go. Like this is one of those moments where you're supposed to put everything aside and show up. But another part of me knows that showing up doesn't fix anything. It doesn't change the past. It doesn't make us suddenly have the relationship we never had. You're right. Doesn't. So the question is, do you want to go? Not should you, but do you want to? I thought about that. Did I want to see him? Did I want to sit beside his hospital bed and hold his hand and pretend we had the kind of relationship where that gesture meant something? Or would I just be performing daughterhood one more time, playing a role to make other people comfortable? I don't think I do. I think if I go, it'll be out of guilt or obligation, and I've worked too hard to break free of those things. Then don't go. Send a message through Kevin if you want. But don't go just because you think you're supposed to. Thank you. I needed to hear that. I texted Kevin. I'm not coming to the hospital, but I'm thinking of all of you. Let me know how the surgery goes. His response came quickly. I understand. I'll keep you posted. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice for you. The next morning, Christmas morning, Kevin called with an update. The surgery had gone well. Dad was in recovery, expected to make a full recovery with lifestyle changes. Mom was relieved. Amanda was organizing a recovery schedule. Michael was handling business matters. Everything was being managed. Did he say anything about me not being there? He seemed disappointed, but not surprised. I think he understands in his way. I spent Christmas Day with Maya's family again. The warmth and chaos of their holiday traditions wrapping around me like a blanket. Maya's mom hugged me tight when I arrived. We're so glad you're here. You're always welcome in this house, you know that? I know. Thank you. It was the truth. I did know. These people had welcomed me without reservation, without conditions, without requiring me to earn my place at their table. That's what family was supposed to feel like. The new year arrived with promises of fresh starts and clean slates. The studio had its most successful year on record. We'd built something sustainable, something real. Maya and her husband were talking about buying a house. Sophie was planning a photography trip to Iceland. And me, I was just living. Working hard. Loving the people who loved me back. Building a life that felt authentic. In late January, I received a letter. Not certified, not formal. Just a regular envelope with my father's handwriting on the front. Inside was a card, blank except for what he'd written. Sarah, I'm writing this from home, recovering. The doctors say I need to reduce stress, change my habits, slow down. I've been doing a lot of thinking about what matters. About what I want the rest of my life to look like. I owe you an apology. A real one. Not the half attempts I've made before. I was wrong to exclude you. I was wrong to tell you that you weren't ready when the truth was I didn't know how to see you. I was wrong to contest your grandmother's will, to try to take from you what she wanted you to have. I was wrong to write you out of mine in anger. I was wrong about a lot of things. You don't have to forgive me. You don't have to come back. You don't owe me anything. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. And I'm sorry. I'm proud of you. For leaving. For building something. For being strong enough to walk away from people who weren't giving you what you needed. I should have said that years ago. I'm saying it now, even though it's too late. Your father. I read the letter 3 times, each time feeling something different. Surprise, sadness, a strange sense of closure. It wasn't everything. It didn't erase the years of hurt or the patterns of exclusion. But it was real. It was honest. It was the first time he truly acknowledged what he'd done without deflecting or justifying. I didn't respond immediately. I sat with the letter for days, carrying it with me, rereading it when doubt crept in. And slowly I realized something. I didn't need to respond. I didn't need to accept his apology or reject it. I could just hold it as evidence that people could change, could grow, could see things they'd been blind to. That acknowledgement was enough. 2 weeks later, I sent a short response. A card with a simple message. Thank you for writing. Thank you for being honest. I'm building a good life. I hope you're taking care of yourself. Sarah. It wasn't forgiveness exactly. It wasn't reconciliation. It was just acknowledgement. A closing of a circle that had been open too long. A recognition that we'd both changed, both grown, both learned hard lessons about love and family and the cost of seeing clearly. Spring came early that year. The cherry blossoms bloomed in March, and the city transformed into something magical. The studio was thriving. Our reputation had grown. We were booking weddings a year in advance, had been featured in 2 major photography magazines, and had started mentoring young photographers who wanted to learn the business side of art. One afternoon, Sophie burst into the studio with news. "You're not going to believe this. Remember that portrait series I did last year? The one with the teenagers talking about identity? It won an award. A national award. They want to fly me to New York for the ceremony." We screamed. We hugged. We cried happy tears. Sophie's success was our success. That's what real family did. They celebrated each other's wins without jealousy or competition. They lifted each other up. That night we went out to celebrate. Dinner at a nice restaurant we usually couldn't afford, wine that didn't come in a box, dessert we didn't need but ordered anyway. We toasted to Sophie, to hard work, to dreams coming true. And sitting there, surrounded by laughter and love and light, I realized something profound. I'd spent so many years waiting to be ready in my family's eyes, waiting for permission to join, to belong, to matter. But readiness was never the point. The point was that they'd needed someone to be less than so they could feel like more. They'd needed someone to keep small so their own bigness felt justified. And I'd refused to stay small. I'd walked away, built something, became someone. Not in spite of their exclusion, but because of what I'd learned in that exclusion. I'd learned that I didn't need permission. I didn't need validation. I didn't need a seat at a table that was never meant for me. I could build my own table. I could choose who sat there. I could decide what nourishment looked like. Maya raised her glass one more time. To Sarah, who taught us that leaving doesn't mean giving up. It means choosing yourself. And that's the bravest thing anyone can do. We drank, and I felt something settle deep in my bones. Not happiness exactly, though there was plenty of that. But something deeper. Certainty. The knowledge that I'd made the right choices. That I'd honored myself even when it cost me. That I'd built a life worth living. Surrounded by people worth loving. Kevin visited in April. He'd enrolled in architecture school, was living in Seattle, was figuring out who he was outside of our family's expectations. We spent the weekend exploring Portland, eating at food trucks, taking photos, talking about everything and nothing. On his last night, we sat on my apartment's tiny balcony, watching the city lights come on as dusk settled in. Do you ever regret it? Leaving? I thought about that. Not the leaving itself. But sometimes I regret what I had to leave to find peace. I regret that it had to be a choice between them and myself. I wish there'd been a middle ground where everyone could grow. Do you think there ever will be? A middle ground? Maybe. People change. Dad's apology was real, I think. And Amanda called me a few months ago to apologize too. So maybe. But even if there isn't, I'm okay. I'm more than okay. I'm happy. That's what matters. Kevin nodded, staring out at the city. I'm proud of you. I don't think I ever said that. But I am. You showed me it was possible to walk away. To choose yourself. Without you doing it first, I don't think I ever would have had the courage. You would have. Eventually. Some of us just take longer to find the exit. After he left, I cleaned up the wine glasses and stood on the balcony alone for a while. The city hummed below, full of people living their lives, making their choices, finding their way. I was one of them now. Not invisible, not waiting, not hoping to be seen. Just existing fully and completely. In a life I'd built with my own hands. The journal Grandma Rose had given me was almost full now. Pages and pages of thoughts, fears, hopes, realizations. I opened it to the last blank page and wrote one final entry. Dear Grandma Rose, I did it. I took your gift and I built something beautiful. I left the table where I wasn't fed and I created a feast. I stopped waiting to be ready and I just started being. You were right. The problem was never me. It was their inability to see. And now I see myself so clearly. I see my strength, my resilience, my worth. I see that I deserved better than what they gave me. And I see that I was brave enough to go find it. Thank you for seeing me first. Thank you for giving me tools I didn't know I'd need. Thank you for loving me when I couldn't love myself. I'm ready now. Not because anyone declared me so, but because I declared myself so. And that's the only readiness that ever mattered. With all my love and gratitude, Sarah. I closed the journal and placed it on the shelf next to all the other evidence of my journey. The letters, the photos, the trust documents, my father's apology. All of it proof that I'd lived through something hard and come out whole. Not perfect, not unscathed, but whole. Summer arrived with long days and warm nights. The studio was busier than ever. Maya was pregnant, glowing with the kind of joy that radiates outward. Sophie was planning her Iceland trip, her award displayed prominently on our office wall. And me, I was shooting a wedding on a Saturday in June when I looked up and saw my mother standing at the back of the venue. She wasn't dressed for a wedding, just regular clothes, looking small and uncertain in a way I'd never seen her look before. I finished shooting the first look, made sure my assistant had everything covered, then walked over to where she stood. Mom, what are you doing here? I wanted to see you, to see what you've built. Kevin told me where you'd be today. I hope that's okay. I should have been angry at the intrusion, at the lack of boundaries. But looking at her, I just felt tired. Tired of anger, tired of resentment, tired of carrying weight that wasn't mine. I'm working. But if you want to wait, we can talk after. I'll wait. She sat in the back of the venue for the next 4 hours. Through the ceremony, through the reception, through all the speeches and dances and carefully choreographed moments. She watched me work, saw me direct and shoot and capture moments that would become memories. When it was finally over, when the last guest had left and my team was packing up equipment, I found her still sitting there. We went to a coffee shop nearby, one I didn't frequent so it felt neutral. She ordered tea she didn't drink. I ordered coffee I did. Your work is beautiful, Sarah. I had no idea. I mean, I knew you had a studio, but I didn't understand what that meant. What you created. Thank you. I'm sorry I never asked. Never came to see. Never showed interest. I was so caught up in everything else and everyone else's problems that I missed you entirely. I know. She looked at me with wet eyes. How do I fix this? Tell me how to fix this. I don't know if you can. The past is the past. We can't unmake it. But the future. Can we have a future? I thought about that. About what a future with my mother might look like. Tentative phone calls maybe. Occasional visits. Careful conversations that danced around old hurts. It wouldn't be the relationship I'd wanted as a child. But maybe it could be something real, something honest. Maybe. But it has to be different. You can't show up only when it's convenient. You can't expect me to perform gratitude for basic decency. You can't ask me to pretend the past didn't happen. If we're going to build something, it has to be built on truth. I understand. I can do that. I want to try. We talked for another hour. Not about the past, not about apologies. Just about the present. She told me about her life, about Dad's recovery, about how quiet the house felt now that everyone had scattered. I told her about the studio, about Maya and Sophie, about the life I'd built. It wasn't comfortable, but it was real. And real was better than the performance we'd been doing for years. When we parted, she hugged me. Not long, not desperately. Just a simple hug that acknowledged both the distance and the possibility of closing it. Thank you for giving me a chance. I'm not promising anything, Mom. Just that I'm willing to see what happens. That's enough. That's more than enough. I watched her drive away, feeling something shift. Not healing exactly, not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. Maybe the acknowledgement that some relationships can't be saved, but they can be transformed. They can become something different, something more honest, even if they're never what you originally wanted. The rest of the summer passed in a blur of work and life and small joys. My mother called once a week, brief conversations that stayed surface level but felt genuine. My father sent occasional texts, updates about his health, questions about my business. Kevin came down twice more, bringing his girlfriend who I liked immediately. Amanda sent a friend request on social media that I accepted after thinking about it for a week. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't the family reunion movie moment where everyone hugs and cries and all is forgiven. But it was real. It was progress. It was people trying, in their imperfect ways, to do better. And through it all I kept building. Kept working. Kept loving the life I'd created. Because that was the real victory. Not that they'd finally seen me, but that I'd learned to see myself. That I'd stopped waiting for permission to exist and had just started existing. Fully, completely, without apology. On the last day of August, Maya gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Sophie and I were at the hospital, pacing the waiting room with Maya's family, crying when we finally got to meet her. Maya named her Rose after my grandmother, and when she told me I sobbed. She saw you first. Feels right to honor her. Holding baby Rose in my arms, I felt the circle close. Grandma Rose had given me tools for survival. I'd used those tools to build a life. And now a new Rose was entering the world. Born into chosen family, welcomed without condition, seen from her very first breath. This was what breaking patterns looked like. Not dramatic or perfect but real. One generation refusing to pass on pain. One woman choosing to leave rather than accept less than she deserved. One grandmother saving in secret so her granddaughter would have options. One baby being born into love that didn't require earning. I looked at Maya, exhausted and radiant. Thank you for including me in this. For making me part of your family. You've always been part of my family. You just finally believe it now. Yeah, I finally believe it. That night, driving home through empty streets, I thought about readiness. About all the years I'd spent waiting to be declared ready by people who'd never planned to declare me anything. About how readiness wasn't something bestowed but something claimed. About how I'd finally stopped asking permission and started giving it to myself. I was ready. I'd always been ready. And the only tragedy was how long it took me to believe that. But I believed it now. And that made all the difference. The years that followed moved like water, steady and purposeful. The studio expanded into a second location. Maya's daughter Rose grew into a curious toddler who loved playing with camera equipment. Sophie's work took her around the world, but she always came home to us. And me, I just kept building one photograph at a time, one relationship at a time, one choice at a time. My relationship with my mother evolved slowly. Monthly lunches that became comfortable. Occasional visits that felt genuine. She met Maya and Sophie, saw the life I'd created. Stopped trying to fix what couldn't be fixed and started appreciating what was. My father and I remained cordial but distant. An understanding that some wounds heal into scars that you respect rather than ignore. Kevin finished architecture school and started his own firm. Amanda's kids grew up, and she softened in ways that made conversations possible. Michael reached out once to tell me he admired what I'd built, and we left it at that. The family didn't reunite in any grand way. We just learned to exist in each other's orbits without collision. On the 5th anniversary of leaving home, I stood in the studio surrounded by images from hundreds of weddings, births, celebrations. Each photograph a moment captured, a memory preserved, a life honored. This was what I'd built with Grandma Rose's gift. Not just a business but proof that being ready was never about them. It was always about me choosing myself and that choice making all the difference. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.